Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shivering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one Murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Please. It begins now. Yes, indeed, folks. You're tuning in to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. Welcome to the show. Yay, yo, yo, and all that good stuff. We have a jam-packed show for you today, as always, as it's turning out to be. Blue Please is the ballistic missile of podcasting. Sort of firing at high speed from one place to another and hoping to vaguely land outside of the civilian area. We'll see what happens. Anyway, right, WoW is the name of the game, of course. This week we have a special interview with Mr. Spiritwolf, the legend Grand Master of WoW Comics. If you want some tips on how to get your comics done and just want to know what on earth Spiritwolf is doing with himself, we've got an interview coming up. 20-minute long interview a little bit later on in the show. I also have a very special announcement, also to come a little bit later on the show. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now, because that would ruin the point. I'd give you the special announcement, say, oh, he's giving me the special announcement, we'll go elsewhere now, and listen to, I don't know, some other thing that isn't quite as good. Now, that would, in my opinion, just be completely unjust, so, not going to do that. Also, this week, we have yet another giveaway. A giveaway of piratical proportions. Piratical is probably not a word, but I just made it up anyway. Word of the week, folks, piratical. You know it. You love it. Right, so, we are doing an epic giveaway. Again, this time with Captain Dan and the Scurvy Crew CDs. I actually got a booty box, a treasure chest, if you will, of stuff through the mail a couple of days ago from Captain Dan. He said, hey, we got a load of fans recently claiming to be from WoW Radio. Would like to thank which DJ actually played this by giving you some CDs to give away. So I thought, yeah, cool, that was epic. A while ago played that. So thanks to those who went and checked out Captain Dan's website. He's got a MySpace, myspace.com/Captain Dan. All of the music in this show, bar one track, will be provided by Captain Dan. And fortunately for you guys listening to the archives, I've been given permission to leave it in there. Absolutely. So, we're going to be giving those away a little bit later on in the show in a contest that I would like to call Where is the RP? Yes, I did just say the RP. So, we've got that to come. We have an epic Nubcake News. 7.5 minutes of Nubcake News, which is, in my opinion, the best one I've ever done. We shall see. We shall see what you think about that one. And, of course, an Ask the Murloc. So, we also have one little thing that I introduced last week and I'm going to continue to do because, well, there's not enough space in the show to fit everything in. So, I'm doing something called
Second Wind!
Yes, Second Wind. And Second Wind, the purpose of Second Wind, what is the purpose of Second Wind? Second Wind is to take the topic that we started off at the end of last week's show, give it a week to perhaps develop, progress, get you emailing in with your opinions, and then to revisit it. The start of this show in Second Wind. Yes!
Second Wind!
No gnomes were harmed much in the making of that drop-in. Right, okay, I had a nice email, very long email actually, from a Mr. Tom Wink. Yes. And he says this, I'm going to pick bits and pieces out because this is huge, absolutely huge email. Bear this in mind. Second Wind likes your opinion, so feel free to email themurloc@gmail.com with a Second Wind topic or anything else that happens to be going on this week in Blue Please. So here we go. He says this is entirely my opinion, So that being said, let me remind you, before we go on, of just what we talked about in last week's Second Wind. Last week's Second Wind, the topic was, are we returning to the old-style endgame? And if so, is that acceptable? And here's his opinion on that. He says, this is entirely my opinion. I believe that raiding will always continue to be the most prestigious activity in WoW, and PvP accomplishments will never meet that. The reason is simple, and the fact that PvP is fundamentally easier to accomplish because it is an individual accomplishment. You don't need a good guild or even a guild at all to do well at PvP. Sure, pre-formed groups may do very well and may very well be the way to go, but even in that instance, a pre-formed Wars and Gulch group is no greater an accomplishment than a guild Scullo run. Let's face it, running Scullo or Shadow Labyrinth, etc. is not a guild accomplishment. You may run it better with a group of guildies, but then you should. It's a given, not an accomplishment. And he says this, PvP loot suffers from preconceptions that can be attached to the person wearing it. 1. Your PvP loot tells me that you haven't acquired better via raiding. Sad but true. No counsel for your peers gives you your PvP loot. Good raid loot is not only sometimes or often better, but you can only obtain it via the consent of your peers. As in, he's talking about DKP, loot council, that kind of thing. Which says a lot to the value of the player that you actually are. He also says, it doesn't tell me that you're a person who is tolerable to be around. The validation of membership in an accomplished raiding guild can tell otherwise. A person can be kicked from a raid for being a lazy douche, but cannot be kicked out of a battleground for it. It doesn't tell me necessarily that you have the know-how to function as part of a team. All the PvP epics in the world can't assure me that you're not going to wipe my 5-man group like a noob. It doesn't even tell me you're particularly good at PvP, and to be honest, I don't even particularly care if you're good at PvP. And he also says, if you're in a raiding guild, it tells me that you, perhaps, are not serious about raiding, and probably neglect your responsibilities towards the success of the raid outside of raid time. That means gathering the materials needed for consumables and the like. Sure, it's tedious, but a dedicated teammate does it anyway, rather than queuing up for battlegrounds, so often that they've obtained epic loot from it. We all know these people. The ones who complain about not having money for repairs and don't come on time to raids with their own resist pots, etc., etc. That's an interesting point. He also has a couple of fundamental truths for people about raiding versus PvP, or why raiding is actually harder. He says raiding requires more time invested. Some folks will likely disagree, but let's face it, folks who can go far in raiding live and breathe it during the inside and outside of raid time, and the amount of time required never ends. Even the hardest PvP rank or rep on a grind would eventually end. Raiding requires a large team, PvP does not, even in instances where a team is required for PvP. Any schmuck can scrape together the minimal number of friends required to do it. It's not so easy to do so in raiding, and apparently raiding is also very dependent upon guild health. Guilds are hard to hold together. They can fall apart at almost any time for an unforeseeable number of reasons. In which case, your personal raid progression is immediately in jeopardy. Few, if any, people have ever been truly derailed from their PvP goals because their guild was experiencing problems. No one has ever said, oh crap, 20 people just left the guild, I guess we can't PvP anymore. Yeah. Good points, all of them. He's basically saying that while there's been some changes to PvP, and the whole WoW Arena Season 1 will probably be a relatively big thing, it's nowhere near as big as raid progression, and they're also not your average folks. It's interesting, actually, that people always argued PvP is an alternative to raiding because, hey, anyone can do that. Well, yeah, anyone can do that, but to actually be well-known enough in PvP, especially with the new arena system, it's going to be a case of you've got to be not so much subhuman, but superhuman in your dedication to it, and the way that your team is cohesive and all that kind of thing. These aren't your average players either. Your average player is not going to win the season, and they're not even going to get through the qualifiers. I know I'm not going to get through the qualifiers. I suck at PvP. I'm 61 point arcane. I'm spec for PvE. My gear is almost purely plus hit. I'm spec for heroics. I'm spec for raiding. I'm spec for mana efficiency. I'm not spec to deal with PvP, especially not 2v2s, which is why I lose more matches than I win. But again, I just do it for a little bit of a laugh, and I wouldn't mind a little bit of the gear if I can get it. But again, that makes me a nobody. Even on your own realms, if you've at least progressed somewhere in raiding, it does make you somebody. Most realms have a progress thread. They do not have a who is rank 14 thread, or who has this piece of PvP gear thread. They never did. And they most likely never will. And that's the thing. It's been here since day one. PvP has always been a metagame. It's always been a bit of a joke in comparison to raiding. And even if they do introduce this new stuff, we're getting back to the way we were before. The new content is raid content. It is. Have a look at it. Black Temple is your next big content patch. And what's there? Oh, yeah, it's raid. It's a 25-man raid, hopefully incredibly difficult, and will last a long, long time. Difficulty is something we're going to come on to a little bit later in the show with another topic. However, for the moment, what else is coming out? Zulaman. It's apparently, if I remember correctly, a 10-man troll instance. In other words, it's pretty much a upgraded Zul'Gurub. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Troll instances are usually rather amusing. But here we go, we're back to endgame. This is just how it works, and is that acceptable? That's the question. Is it acceptable? Is it something that we can live with? Well, let's face it, people are still playing the game. Yeah? They really are still playing the game. And why are they playing? They're certainly not playing to grind 60 to 70. They want to see what's at the end of the rainbow. They want the pot of gold. They want Slanic's pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Of course they do. Well, what else is there? What's the point in progression otherwise? What's the point in going forward from stage to stage to stage, from level to level to level, from grind to grind, from instance to instance? The point is to get the gear in order to raid something better. And it goes on and on and on. And can it be sustained? Hell yes, it can be sustained. It's been sustained for 2 years already. People get excited about this kind of thing. People get thrilled about it. They like to see how far Nihilum, D&T, Curse, and all those other number Uber guilds are actually progressing. They get hyped up about it. There's even national pride over it. US versus EU. EU versus Korea. Korea versus US. All that kind of thing. Loads of things that actually centre around PvE endgame and not around PvP. And I said, we said so last week on the show that the conclusion was, while arenas are a step in the right direction, probably the only thing that Blizzard now can do to turn PvP into something as significant as PvE without going for a fully blown, completely new realm versus realm style system in the same style as Dark Age of Camelot or Warhammer Online. That's all they can do. The arena system, the seasons, turning it into a glorified sport, which is okay, but again, it's just another mini-game. That's the problem. And I think that's really what people are going to view it as for a very, very long time. And I'd say that the hardcore PvPers are most certainly in the minority in the comparison to hardcore PvEers. Now, that's just always the way it's been, on a PvP server or on a PvE server. When we started off, PvP was nothing. Absolutely nothing. There was nothing there. Literally, it was just, hey, somebody, let's gank it. I don't gain anything from it. Heck, even in the manual it said something about the honor system, but there never was an honor system. It wasn't implemented for a while. And by that point, people were getting interested in, well, what's beyond level 60? What can we do? Hey, a big dragon called Onyxia. Let's try and take that down. Oh, look, the Molten Core. That sounds good. Let's go and do that. Even UBRS, for God's sake, when it used to be difficult. People got thrilled about that. Oh, I can get my dungeon set 1. I can get my tier 0 gear. That's really thrilling. In the same way that, even to some degree now, it's gone full circle and gone right back to where it was before. Ooh, my dungeon set 3. And then, of course, onto my tier 4, as it was onto my tier 1 when Molten Core was out. And then your tier 2 and your 2.5. Gear progression through PvE progress. Now, there isn't a massive amount of difference in comparison to what they used to be, by any stretch of the imagination. There isn't. Look at it. Just look at how it works. It's the same thing, but there have been a little number of subtle changes made in the way that they've decided to release a whole bunch of content at once in comparison to before, when of course no one was level 60. Well, why release all this new content if no one's going to be playing it? Right now it's a case of there's quite a bit. If you're sitting from, say, the standpoint that my guild Blue Please is sitting on, we're sitting on the standpoint of right now we're keying up for Heroics, because we believe Heroics have some nice gear. I would like my full Mana Etch set because it's great for my spec. We would like to get some raid cohesion going. We'd like to get some of those Badge of Justice gear. It's really, really tasty. And of course there's the epic gems, some of the epic loot in there, and it's good practice because you've got to be really cohesive as a group. And then we're going Karazhan. Okay, then we're going Karazhan. We'll wipe our way through Karazhan and eventually beat Karazhan. Then what do we got? Well, the logical progression on from that is Gruul's Lair. So we take Gruul's Lair, and then perhaps we take Mount Theroden. Then we might take Serpent Shrine. And then, of course, we might take the Eye. By that point, we've got a 25-man out. Hell, probably by that point we'll have Zulaman and any number of other things out. That's the standpoint of a guild that's been set up to start going through Burning Crusade content from the very get-go. It's not an established raiding guild pre-expansion, but that's just the way it was going. And if you look at it from that perspective, compared to what you were doing before, when that was the same. You know, you would establish a guild for legacy content, and you hadn't raided before, so you went through Scholarmance, you went through Stratum, you went through LBRS, UBRS, and then Diamore when that was released. Then what did you do? You went and took Onyxia down, you went for Molten Core, and then of course when Zul'Gurub came out, you went in there as well. Zul'Gurub, of course, probably released at the wrong time, but, you know, that's the benefit of hindsight, isn't it? Usually you'd have something like that to start us off with, and this time we've got Karazhan. Karazhan is your Zul'Gurub, in my honest opinion, this time around. And then, after Karazhan, you've got your 25-mans, and it's interesting because there is no massive long instance like Molten Core just yet, but that doesn't mean there won't be in the future. The Black Temple could effectively be the Molten Core this time around, and this is when Molten Core, of course, was difficult. Black Temple, no doubt, will be difficult at this point in time, but then, maybe 2 years on, we'll look back and say, oh, the Black Temple, you can pug that. The next expansion, we can have people going and 10-manning it. You know, like we did yesterday. We went in 5-man Bloodlord Bandicoots. I used to remember when we used to wipe on that when the Zul'Gurub was first released. So, you see this kind of infinite cycle of raid progression going on and on and on, but you never see anything like that in PvP. PvP has always been a little bit stagnant. It's never really moved on in that respect. It's not like you can go from Warsong Gulch through to Arathi Basin, through to Altarat Valley and say that that's progression. It's not progression. It's instant gratification. It's grinding honor to get some gear that is not really as good as raiding gear. That's the way it is. And that's probably the way it's always going to be, because PvP is less difficult than raiding. Why? Because you don't need a huge bloody guild to do it, and you don't need to dedicate as much time to it. Sorry, PvPers, I PvP as well. I'm not especially good at it. I used to be alright at it when I was spec for PvP, but no, I don't believe that PvP is ever going to be matched up to PvE, and I can see that the PvE endgame is going to be the thing. It really is. It's going to be the in thing for a very, very, very long time. You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with yourself, Total Biscuit. If you want to email your opinions, themurloc@gmail.com is the place to be. After the break, we shall be talking about new content and the armory. Interesting things. However, I have an epic Nubcake news for you right now. Enjoy. Nubcake news. Stop that. Welcome to this week's edition of Nubcake News. Coming up later in the show, an exclusive look at the second expansion for World of Warcraft, including such innovations as an increased level cap, white quality items with 9,000 stamina, and a forest of mushrooms. But first, the worldwide community as a whole, including those who do not play World of Warcraft, have been up in arms over the latest feature to hit the World of Warcraft internet, the Armory. Players call it an invasion of privacy, a Big Brother-style spy tool, the internet equivalent of a skateboarding otter. Quite obviously, all these statements are true, so we decided to attempt to reach Blizzard for a comment. Our correspondent was sent back in pieces, apparently covered in cheese, with a note reading, "Nerf this, Blizzard! Yeah, don't mess with Blizzard, Blizzard! Tony, WTF are you doing? This is what all the cool kids are saying on the forums. It'll appeal to the masses. But it's got nothing to do with the flayed cheese-covered reporter. Well, if you're so smart, you write something. Fine, fine. Dear Murloc, how can we speed up our website? We at Nubcake News were pleased with the cheese-covered reporter. With a few added herbs and a bit of reheating, he went down quite nicely. This time, however, we decided to send stealth reporter Sam Angler into Blizzard HQ, where, from his vantage point stuck to the ceiling, he was able to record a Blizzard concept design meeting between lead designer Tigol and Fura, whom we assume to be the janitor or something.
Vera, you nubstick, wake up!
What? Who? Where the hell am I?
You're in the design room, codenamed the Fortress of Solitude, because this is where we came up with our one solitary original idea, meeting stones.
But why am I even here?
Because the entire design team is off sick. Food poisoning, something about a cheese-coated dwarf with a microphone. Don't ask me what those peons eat, disgusting creatures.
But I don't have any experience designing MMOs.
Since when do you need experience to do that? Oh wait, it's time to spin the wheel of infinite mystery and see what design decision we have to make this week. Nerf druids? Check. Nobody likes those hybrid classes anyway.
Wait a minute. This is how you make important decisions about the game?
Well, duh. What did you expect? Random rolls? DKP? Please. So pre-expansion.
Good point, I suppose, but still, I don't understand why you dragged me down here.
Isn't it obvious? We're looking to innovate the MMORPG genre by coming up with new and original ideas. And I need someone to nod and agree with everything I say.
And what will exactly happen if I don't?
We'll put you back in the box.
I'll be good.
This week we came up with something no one had ever done before, the Armory, which allows players to see what other players had for breakfast and what color underwear they're wearing. However, it turns out that some site called CT Profiles has already copied the idea and has sabotaged our website, so that no one can actually use our lovely Armory without waiting 12 hours to load the page. Inconceivable. But we are Blizzard, and we will not give up so easily. Now, I had this idea. To appeal to the emerging female market, to add female character models into World of Warcraft. It's a surefire winner.
Whoa, wait a second. Don't we already have those?
No. Those are male blood elves, silly. Easy mistake to make, though, I guess. Here, why don't I get you a drink?
This beverage is green. I'm not really sure I want to drink this.
Get with the times. The green beverage is better than 4 purple ones put together. Expansion, hello. Your legacy drinks are a thing of the past.
I suppose.
Besides, you guys could use more stamina anyway. Now, where was I? I had this idea. In a future content patch, we could make it so that players could actually leave their spaceships and explore the many stations in the universe.
But we don't even have spaceships or space stations. And besides, didn't EVE Online already do that?
Adam Online, darling. EVE is for girls. Besides, they'll never manage it anyway. How are they supposed to implement spaceships into a fantasy MMO?
But Tiggle, it's a freeform sci-fi capital...
Nonsense. They have kobolds just like we do. Note to self. Add spaceships to the game. Allow players to craft their own and fly off of Azeroth to other worlds and engage in Twitch-based combat with gnomes. But only gnomes. I hate gnomes.
Whoa. Hang on there for a moment. Twitch-based combat? Are you mad, woman? This is an MMO, not counter-suck.
Counter-suck? That's hilarious. I shall have to use that one at our next party. So, I heard that WoW was not considered hardcore enough for the MMO community. I have a new and original idea to help combat this.
Oh, this should be good.
We must increase the amount of XP required to level. I think a multiplier of 20 should suffice.
What would that accomplish? Isn't everyone already 70?
60, darling. The expansion hasn't been released yet.
But...
No buts, darling. The expansion will be huge when we release it in January. We will sell at least 100,000 copies.
But it's already March.
Nonsense. The calendar revolves around Blizzard Entertainment. We must make this expansion as successful as StarCraft Ghost. Silence, whelp. I hired you as a designer, not a blithering dolt who makes decisions at random. Now, I've been thinking about the Druid Epic Flying Form. I've been concerned about balance issues.
Yes. Players have been complaining that the Druid already got a mount at 68 for free, and that adding an epic version would be ludicrous.
Exactly, which is why I came up with a new and original idea. Dual plasma cannons.
Dual what? Plasma? But everyone else is fighting with rudimentary flintlock firearms and bladed weaponry.
Which is why it's so new and original. No one will ever think to put such a thing into our sci-fi MMO. We already innovated by having melee combat in our massively multiplayer first-person shooter World of Warcraft. Why stop now? Dual plasma cannons are the way back to our roots, while innovating in the process.
Don't you think the players might have some issues and concerns as to the balance implications of wing-mounted weapons of mass destruction based on energy weapon technology that doesn't even exist yet?
Yes, I had considered that, which is why we're going to mount them in the eyes instead.
WTF?
Dual plasma eye lasers. A first for any sports game. It'll sell hundreds.
I think you may have hired the wrong guy for the job, I'm afraid, Tiggle. I'm going to go back and sweep up the mess that Fangtooth made on the carpet. You'd think that man had no class.
Do come back again soon, darling. We can discuss the new changes I'll be implementing soon for the warrior class. Barrel rolls.
Right, yes. Bye, Tiggle.
Bye, Fangtooth.
Fura!
Jim?
Ah, very interesting stuff. This brings me renewed faith in Blizzard Entertainment's design process. The future is surely bright. This has been Nubcake News. Good night.